November 11th, 1918. Everyone celebrated the armistice in the Times Squares of the world. While victory flags still waved, America cut the Army Air Service 95%, making it a skeleton force. In France, our airmen had earned the admiration of the Allies, but economy only permitted a handful to rejoin the post-war ranks. Fortunately, among them were Mitchell, Brereton, Spaatz, Arnold, and other future Air Force leaders. Many airmen, such as Captain Eddie Rickenbacker, left the service and adjusted themselves to the rigors of civilian life. A few became world famous, like Air Captain Fiorello LaGuardia. For those who stayed in, there was immediate need for their activities. To inaugurate the U.S. Airmail Service, which was pioneered by the Army, President Wilson escorted the First Lady.
The Postmaster General picked one of us Army pilots to be the first to fly the mail. For the benefit of the Red Cross, the President had addressed a letter to the Postmaster of New York City. Witnesses watched the famous first airmail letter being posted. Lack of instruments and navigation maps made flying tough, but we hoped jobs like this would increase public confidence in our ability. With the mail sacked up and ready to go, Wilson and the pilot discussed the proposed flight. Meanwhile, the 4 mail sacks were stashed away in the open cockpit under the President's friendly gaze. Then the pilot climbed aboard, little dreaming that less than 22 miles from Washington he'd get lost. Later, the first airmail was delivered by another pilot who followed the railroad tracks to New York.
Another Army assignment for men who stayed in uniform was Forest Fire Patrol. Quick detection brought about important savings in the nation's timber. But in those days, the one who most often captured the public's eye was the war-trained flyer who took up barnstorming. With a $50 surplus trainer and a complete disregard for the law of gravity, he worked in a drafty office only a few seconds a day. To wildcats like Howard Hawks, Roscoe Turner, and Stinson goes much credit for introducing America to the sky. Even the obsolete pusher, condemned by the Army before the war, helped popularize aviation, develop airfields, and add to the knowledge of flying. The crowds loved to watch the daredevils outdo each other with spectacular stunts. The steady-flying, easy-to-handle Jenny, standard Army trainer, was the barnstormer's favorite perch. Although some of the more reckless civilian flyers gave aviation a black eye, most of them helped America lead the world toward the air age.
Wherever there was business enough, the gypsy flyer settled down. He bought a bigger plane, rented a larger cow pasture, and often gave free rides, especially to the ladies. Rides with every modern convenience. Eventually, there grew up the private intercity taxi services which flew millions of miles, direct ancestors of today's big commercial lines.
After the war, Congress set up the Air Service as a permanent combat element and permitted training to start again. We studied aerial photography. As the eyes of the Army, one of the Air Service's primary missions was reconnaissance. The main tool was a high-speed aerial camera. After the pictures were taken, the glass plates were developed. Then a lab man made contact prints. Finally, these overlapping pictures were cut up and pasted down as a mosaic. Some of us were briefed for our first mission, strafing maneuvers. This strafing mission was against ground troops armed with anti-aircraft. With the help of the ground crews, we started the takeoffs. Still based on wartime practices, the training program was in 3 parts: primary, basic, advanced. In advanced, we specialized in bombardment, observation, pursuit, or attack. When they heard our engines roar, the troops ran for cover. Flying through their anti-aircraft fire, we strafed the enemy. A mule-drawn ack-ack blazed away.
The Army maintained an active, though limited interest in a lighter-than-air program. At a school in Scottsfield, Illinois, men trained for work with free as well as semi-rigid balloons. AEF success with observation blimps inspired Army interest in non-rigid and semi-rigid airships for 20 years into the future. Air Service Chief General Charles Menaher took pride in showing flight training to General Reed, Commandant, 5th Army Corps. Together, they watched Major Carl Spott signal 18 pursuit crews to prepare for a mass graduation review. This was the big moment after more than a year of the toughest training in the world. As the newest members of the Air Service, they took off to do their part in building America's early air power. It was a magnificent sight to see these squadrons take possession of the air.
Flying safety was a constant goal, and development of a life-saving parachute which the early birds could trust was high on the list of equipment being researched. This test called for jumping off the wing backwards. Another method was having the slipstream open the chute and yank a man off the wing. Although parachutes had been offered by the Service of Supply for some time, our men didn't use them. To prove that the equipment worked, many of the test jumps were made by the inventors themselves.